You're listening to the Phillies Nation podcast with Ty Daubert and Jonny Heller on PhilliesNation.com.
What's going on, everybody? You're listening to another episode of the Phillies Nation podcast. I'm your host, Jonny Heller, here on a pretty eventful day. We're recording on Wednesday night, so the non-tender deadline was at 8 o'clock. We're a couple hours past that. So we have some of that to talk about with the Phillies and also some trade rumors that we'll get into. So, things are finally starting to happen. It's been kind of a slow start to the offseason, but it looks like things will quicken up over the next couple of weeks. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, Ty Daubert. Ty, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Like you said, feels like the off season. Things are happening. And it's when we're at our best, I like to think. So I'm excited to get into it. First moves of the off season for the Phillies have finally started to happen. So it'll be fun to get into.
Yeah, definitely. And it's weird because, the Braves feel like they're done. Maybe not done, but they've added two starting pitchers already, and the Mets just signed Trevor May, former Philly prospect, as a reliever. So it's kind of felt like, even though things have been generally slow, teams have been making moves and the Phillies hadn't been. But obviously, it's not like they had a choice today. They kind of had to make these decisions. So we'll start with the first thing that came out yesterday. Last night, the Phillies settled with Sir Anthony Dominguez, a little over $700,000. It was below the, I think MLB trade rumors had him at 900,000. So it was below that. He was Super 2 eligible, meaning he had more than 2 years of service and was one of the top players in terms of service who had less than 3 years. It's a kind of a weird system, but he was eligible. And, it seems like it should have been a no-brainer, but our own Tim Kelly kind of laid it out in that the Phillies are looking to save money wherever they can this year, and he looked like a non-tender candidate because he's recovering from Tommy John surgery, and he's probably not going to pitch in 2021. Maybe he does towards the end of the season, but it was definitely a good move by the Phillies because Sir Anthony Dominguez was really good, and you're paying for you have him in 2022 and 2023, right? So what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, not keeping him around would have felt pretty short-sighted in my opinion. I think it's the right investment to keep him around, and then that way you are actively involved in his recovery process, and you'll have him under contract for the next season when he should be back pitching full time.
Yeah, exactly. And worst case is, he's never the same guy. Whatever. It's less than $1 million. And what he showed in 2018 was that he could be a dominant reliever. So, it's a shame that there was this time between the original injury and when he finally got Tommy John. Although I think we agree, if you can try to not get Tommy John, then it's worth it. But obviously, in his case, it ended up being just kind of lengthening the time that he would be out for. So again, it was a smart move by the Phillies to bring him back. So probably the other biggest non-tender candidate for the Phillies was Vince Velasquez. We texted about it earlier today, and I said I was leaning towards that they would keep him. You said you were leaning towards that they wouldn't, but we were both, I think, pretty on the fence about it. And they ended up keeping him, I think, just judging by the way the starting pitching market has gone these past couple of days, or couple of weeks, I should say. It makes sense that they kept him based on their self-imposed budget that they're going for this year. They're not going to be able to get anyone better than Vince Velasquez for $4 million, which is
starting pitching does not generally come cheap, and even with the expected kind of smaller contracts that players might get this offseason, because it looks like a lot of teams are trying to save money and won't be spending as much this offseason. it does look like it'll be that way. But Drew Smiley, who had like 6 really impressive starts or something like that with the Giants, he just got 11 million, I believe. So like,
Yeah.
Starting pitchers get good money, and the Phillies need the starting depth. I've written about it. I've said it on here before. Phillies need starting depth, and you're not going to find anybody much better for less money than the around $4 million that Vince Velasquez is going to
We have
get
to keep in mind, like, Rick Porcello got $10 million last year. Like, Porcello was probably
that's a winner.
Well, yeah, he's a winner, obviously. But Velasquez was probably at least as effective as him last year. Now, neither were particularly effective. I don't know if we want to get too far into Velasquez as a pitcher. The one bright spot, he had the highest strikeout rate of his career in 2020. Maybe the new Phillies pitching coach, Caleb Stockton, can kind of tap into Velasquez's stuff a little bit more. Who knows? Doesn't matter. Even if Velasquez doesn't get better, like, he's fine as a swingman, number 5 starter. Like, not a lot of teams have good number 5 starters, right? Like, a dude who pitches to a high 4 ERA, that's what you expect out of that spot, and $4 million for that.
There's value in just going out there and throwing like 4 to 5 innings.
Yeah.
Even if it's not extremely effective, there is value in that, because the back end of the rotation for many teams in baseball is not that good.
Yeah, and Velasquez too. Just another point from 2020. He had a really, really like horrible start to the season, and he had a few nice starts later in the year. His final numbers didn't look that good, anyways. But point being, he still has shown some ability there. He's experienced. He's been here for 5 seasons. I want to say the 3rd longest tenured current Philly. I think it's Neris and Nola, and then Velasquez.
That sounds about right.
But yeah, it made sense. Now, here's the thing I think we should consider, though. Do the Phillies still sign another starter? What do you think?
I think so. I would think so.
Yeah,
not a huge name, but I think even if it's just like a bounce back starter, something like that, to compete for a 5th starter spot,
right.
I think it is somebody.
I agree. I think like the biggest X factor here is Spencer Howard, and he pitched less than 30 innings in 2020 and has never pitched more than 112 innings in a professional career. So he's almost definitely going to have an innings limit. And I think really we don't know how many games the season's going to be, but like, pitchers didn't pitch that much this year, right? And stretching out to 162 games, that's a lot. So you're going to need that insurance, that depth, no matter what. Even without Howard, you need guys there who can take over if there are injuries, which there are probably going to be. And, even if it's someone cheap, you need that depth. And the Phillies don't really have that. They don't have much of that. So just something to keep an eye on this offseason, I think, moving forward. A couple other guys who were kind of no-brainers. Andrew Knapp was tendered a contract. He was, not really much to say on him.
Yeah, they settled outside of arbitration for $1.1 million.
Yeah, and he was really good in 2020. He's a solid backup catcher. Yeah, it is what it is. And
he was really good last year.
Big guy in the clubhouse too. I think people like him. Phillies pitchers always find a way to give him credit. Like, there were a couple of times listening to press conferences last year where like the question wasn't even asked in relation to Knapp, and I think it was one of the times I can remember was like Zach Eflin like threw his name in there. Just a guy who
glue guy.
Glue guy, and you need those. You definitely need those. Who else? Zach Eflin also settled. What was it? 4.4?
4.5, I think.
4.5 million. It'll be interesting. Was that?
Hale was another.
Hale, 850,000, I think. I saw some people on Twitter unhappy about the Hale thing. Listen, he has a career ERA of like 4.2. So, I mean, if you're watching the Phillies bullpen in 2020, right? I mean, it seemed like there was, like to get a guy who at least half the time he's not going to give up a run. Like, come on. The Phillies bullpen would take that in a heartbeat.
Phillies would have been better off last season with Hale pitching a lot more out of the bullpen.
Right. They would have been better if they had 9 David Hales in the bullpen. So like, let's not get. Listen, I know there's an argument of the Phillies need to spend money and they might not, and that's like a whole different discussion. That doesn't mean like giving $850,000 to a guy like David Hale is a bad move. It doesn't mean that keeping Vince Velasquez is a bad move. Those moves can be smart as long as they come along with making good and bigger signings in free agency, which we don't know that they'll do, but that doesn't make these moves bad. The Phillies will be heading into arbitration, or at least they haven't settled with Rhys Hoskins. Scott Boras guy, I think that'll be interesting to watch. This is his first year of arbitration. And as of now, they haven't settled with Velasquez. It's his last year of arbitration. Yeah. Do you have anything else to say about any of those guys?
They agreed with Neris. I don't know if we said that.
Oh yeah, they did agree with Neris. $5 million. Someone I think maybe last week I don't know if I said it on the pod. I said it to you, Ty, that I thought he kind of was a non-tender candidate in my mind. That someone who, like, if the Phillies were really going to cheap out, they could say, all right, we're not going to sign Neris. We're going to give a bunch of $1 and $2 million contracts to other relievers on the market, but they kept him, which was obviously the smart call. So yeah. All right. So there were some rumors today, as I mentioned at the top of the podcast, first mentioned by John Heyman and then echoed by Robert Murray of Fansided. So the Phillies, or a name that has been coming up in talks a lot, is Jean Segura, Phillies infielder. Robert Murray mentioned that the Blue Jays were the biggest team who or a team he knew were engaged in those talks. I was surprised, honestly, to see that they're shopping Segura, because right now their infield is Segura at shortstop and Kingery at second base, or maybe the other way around. Maybe they think Kingery's better at shortstop, but one of those two variations. I don't think Bryson Stott is ready yet. They don't really have anyone else there. So if they trade Jean Segura, what does the infield look like? Like what?
Well, they'd have to pick up like at least 1 or 2 rentals.
Right.
But the only way that makes sense is if they are definitely going to bring back Gregorius.
Right.
Which I don't think that means that necessarily, though.
I agree. They didn't extend a qualifying offer to Gregorius, and I don't I don't think that saving money here definitely means they would spend it elsewhere. It might just be saving money for the sake of saving money. Quick note on Segura: his contract, he's owed, I think, $14.25 million each of the next 2 seasons, and then he has a $17 million club option in 2023. So he's locked in for this season and next season. That's not money that I don't think the Phillies should be dying to get rid of. Jean Segura is a good player. He was
good. He was good this past year.
He was really good, and he was like a really, really good defender at second base
and good at third.
Yeah, he was solid at third too, right? He could pretty much play. I mean, I think shortstop is probably where they want him to play the least, but he can play any of those 3 positions and won't really hurt you at any of them, I don't think. And he bounced back a little bit at the plate. He had a higher OBP than 2019. All around better player. So it doesn't make sense unless, like you said, unless they're planning to just scoop up Gregorius, which I don't know if that's the plan. I don't know how they get better. And even then, you don't get that much better. The best configuration of the Phillies middle infield is Jean Segura at second base and Didi Gregorius at shortstop. which they could pretty
Yeah.
easily pull off. And
They could. I mean, they had both those players this past season, right?
Yes.
That usually, as long as you're willing to pay, at least close to whatever other teams would be offering for Gregorius, if you're the team that had him and he seemed to have a good time in Philadelphia, I think that would make you one of the front runners. Something I just wanted to add about Segura's defense a little bit. I think when people talk about his ability to play shortstop, they're kind of viewing it right now as like, yeah, he's good at second base, but he's a failed shortstop or whatever. So I think it's almost like there's a negative connotation to the fact that he is not able to play short, and if they don't bring Gregorius back, like um, having him stuck at shortstop would be a bad thing. And I mean, the fact that he's able to play two positions really well and then also be able to hang around at shortstop, even if it is like mediocre to below average, like that's really valuable. The ability to play all three positions like that. And you don't want him to be a regular shortstop, like you said, but what he showed on defense last year, like that was really impressive, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Ty, I think last season, it might have been inspired by watching Segura. I think you told me that all like elite third basemen are just failed shortstops, like Nolan Arenado.
Yeah, I mean,
Manny Machado,
yes.
they're just failed short.
Failed
Michael
shortstops.
Schmidt, failed shortstop. So,
Yeah, but Machado's whole thing for a while was that he wanted to play shortstop.
and then he was bad.
Here's the thing: you're at third base and you're good at it because
Right.
you weren't very good at shortstop. That's how it goes. And that's not a bad thing. That's all right.
No, it's fine. Yeah. Do you think the Phillies could get anything for Segura? Or do you think it'd be just a salary dump?
I don't know.
I saw just someone, I don't remember who, not anyone with like in the know, but like floated the idea of a swap for Tanner Roark. What's the point?
What do you gain there?
Yeah, especially if you're keeping Velasquez. Like,
he's not much. I know that people have. I think Roark's been connected to the Phillies before. He is not much better than Velasquez, and at that point, you're losing one of your better regulars from last season. Like that doesn't make you any better in 2021.
agreed. And I think something we need to just set in general. As fun as it is to think of trades and stuff, like the Phillies don't need to make any trades to become a really good, or at least a good team in 2021. All they have to do is sign good players, because there are so many good players available and there are very few teams who are willing to spend a lot on these players. So like, you don't need to go out and trade. You don't need to do.
There's probably like 12 players that got non-tendered today that they could sign, and it would put them pretty close to the playoffs.
Right. Exactly. So it's not a matter of, I know like it, we don't really know who's in charge or who's going to be in charge this offseason. And that's another discussion. But again, they don't have to get super creative. They just have to be willing to spend some money. Like, we've said it so many times, but you take last year's roster and you replace Arrieta with a better, or even a similar quality pitcher, and then you shaping up the bullpen a little bit. That team is making the playoffs, or at least really contending to. So, let's trade talks are fun, but they're not necessary. Especially in the context of this offseason. I think you mentioned that there are some guys who are non-tender today. Are there any specific names you want to talk about? You think the Phillies should target?
Archie Bradley from the Reds was with the Diamondbacks for a long time. Yeah, he failed starter, just like third baseman, and with shortstops, he was a failed starter and became a really good reliever. That's kind of the thing with most relievers; they are failed starters, but some of them make it work in the bullpen. Archie Bradley definitely did, and he was non-tendered today, and I think he could probably be signed for around what like Neris got, something around that. And I think he'd be a big addition to the bullpen.
Yeah, I agree. I think he'd be, a very good addition. Eddie Rosario is a guy that I was thinking, non-tendered by the Twins. Maybe not really addressing a need. I think probably addresses more of a need if there's a designated hitter, which it's crazy. It's December and teams don't know. Like a little tangent here, but Marcell Ozuna, like his entire, like what his worth is this offseason is fully dependent on if there's a designated hitter. So like he can't really sign right now because he might be losing out on money, so it's kind of crazy. I don't really get the holdup, but anyways, Rosario, it's
Dahl could play
Right.
center for the Phillies.
Yeah.
David Dahl from the Rockies.
Yeah. Adam Duvall, I think, is another DH-esque guy. I mean, dudes who hit bombs, why not?
Yeah, there's a lot of those that
Yeah.
Schwarber's one that comes to mind. The DH types that you don't know if there's going to be a DH.
Right. Another interesting name who got non-tendered. I guarantee he will not be on the Phillies next year, but Michael Franco got non-tendered by the Royals. He was like pretty solid, pretty good. Probably his one of his better years. Was leading the league in doubles for a while. I think trailed off at the end because Cesar Hernandez ended up leading the league in doubles. But he'll probably be on his third team in 3 years. Do you like any thoughts on Michael Franco?
Not particularly. Like you said, he probably is not back, I would guess. But, a team looking for an 8-hole hitter, they should take a chance.
One of the most elite 8-hole hitters in, baseball history.
It did. I know that it's easy to make jokes about that now, like the best 8-hole hitter. But for like 2-3 weeks in the beginning of the 2019 season, it did feel real.
He was intentionally walked like 6 times in the span of 3 games at one point. It was kind of absurd.
That home run, I think it was off the foul pole in that first day game of 2019. I was like,
yeah,
all right,
yeah,
they probably will win the World Series. It didn't really work out that way, but it felt like they had the best lineup in the league 1 through 8.
Yeah, a lot of former Phillies are free agents again. So,
Hernandez could be coming back. Guy you just mentioned.
Yeah, Ty wrote a nice article about bringing back Hernandez, but yeah, that'll do it for this episode of the Phillies Nation podcast. Next week, winter meetings. So I think they start on the 7th, which would be Wednesday. So we'll probably record the first day, have a lot to talk about. Yeah, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.
You can listen to the Phillies Nation podcast with Ty Daubert and Jonny Heller every Wednesday on PhilliesNation.com and all streaming services.